guys, what's going on? This is Ash here coming at you today in Raid Shadow Legends. How you guys doing today? We're going to talk about a very important group of champions, 14 champions inside the game right now, with a few most recent additions to the game that we'll talk about in today's video. All the champions in the game that have decreased defense on a 3-turn cooldown at a 95% or more clip of actually landing it, okay? There will be one kind of small exception to that rule in today's video. We also have a few honorable mentions, some great and dependable decreased defense options, but might not have it on a 3-turn cooldown. Before we jump into it, I'm feeling kind of lucky today, and I'm also looking for Deacon Armstrong, so let's open a couple.
Don't do it. You'll regret it, man. Trust me.
And I want to note for you guys too that I'm going to give the multipliers of all of these AoE attacks, so you guys can kind of put that into consideration when choosing who you want to upgrade next. Just keep in mind, of course, that multipliers don't tell the full story. It also depends on their base stats as well. But we can see their base stats. We can't see their multipliers. That's why we're going to provide it today, courtesy of Ayumi Love. So let's go ahead and jump in and start with the honorable mentions here. So these are champions that you guys would mention in the comments if I did not mention them at the top. They're great champions. All four of them, very, very dependable. However, again, it's either not a 100% chance at landing or it's on a 4-turn cooldown, such as the case with Singing Steel from Tyrell. Has the decreased defense on an AoE, but again, on a 4-turn cooldown. We see the same thing with Zargala. She's a little bit more nuanced. She's a pretty dependable decreased defense champion, but again, on a 4-turn cooldown, it's 3 AoEs. After the first wave of AoEs, you have a 50% chance, 75 when booked, at landing the decreased defense. What helps her out though is if she kills somebody with her A2 on a 2-turn cooldown, she instantly activates that AoE. So she's pretty dependable. You know, she could be the 15th champion on the list because you get 2 AoEs at 75% chance and you get that additional A2. However, it is a 4-turn cooldown. Next up, we have a champion I am a huge fan of, and it's Dagger. Dagger actually puts out a decent amount of damage as well, guys. And she has an AoE decreased defense, neutral affinity being a void on a 3-turn cooldown. Again, it is a 75% chance though. And then last but not least, one of the better champions in the game, it's Madame Ceres. She has an AoE decreased defense, decreased attack, and buff removal on a 4-turn cooldown though, not a 3-turn cooldown. So for dungeons, when you really want all those enemies to be under decreased defense all the time, much preferable to have a 3-turn cooldown. So there we go. Those are our honorable mentions for great debuffers, but again, not on the list today because of the specific requirements. So I have them kind of sorted out by affinity this time instead of faction. That way you guys can kind of make a list if you want to as well and kind of recognize who's available in each affinity as a dependable debuffer. So starting out with Force, we have number one of my faves, is Abyss. So Abyss is a great champion, insane multipliers all over the place, especially on Divine Wrath, very, very amazing ability. We did a spotlight on her along with like a bunch of other really good Force champions in our best Force nukers, or our Force nuke off, I guess. I want to do that again with Spirit and Magic coming soon. Subscribe, turn your bell notifications, all that good stuff for that. But anyway, Mass Impalement is an AoE, decreased defense, 100% chance at landing, and the multipliers are 5.1 on this. That's a lot. And she has very high base attack. So needless to say, she's one of the best sheer damage dealers inside the entire game, and she carries the decreased defense. Next up is going to be, I included this dude as my most underrated champion in Orc faction, and it's Robar. He hits like a truck as well, specifically on his Merciless Assault on a 4-turn cooldown. However, his decreased defense is on Wild Swing. And again, we see it's a 75% chance, can be booked up to 100, and it's on a 3-turn cooldown. Everything that we're looking for, and he has a 4.3 multiplier on this Wild Swing and a very, very high base attack, one of the higher in the game at 1619. So very nice to see there. We also see our only appearance from a rare champion on this list outside of the honorable mention to Dagger, and that is, of course, the OG Where is she? Right here, War Maiden. So War Maiden has, of course, her A3. It's an AoE, decreased defense. She's a farmable champion, I think stage 9 maybe, in campaign. So I think a lot of you guys, myself included, rely heavily on War Maiden, especially in the early game. She scales off as you get into the end game, but very dependable for progression inside this game. And she has a 4.0 multiplier on this Crumbling Blast. Actually deals a significant amount of damage. So she can definitely be kind of your secondary damage dealer on your team as well. And guys, that's it. Those are the only 3 Force Affinity decreased defense champions inside the game on a 3-turn cooldown. Let's move on to Magic, where there is actually 4 of them. Let's start with arguably, well, not arguably, let's just start with the best. It's Dracomorph. His multipliers are nothing because it does no damage, but it also has Weaken. So they are introducing kind of more and more characters to the game that have both decreased defense and Weaken on the same ability. There's still not many though, and Baleful Eye is one of them, and that's Dracomorph. Man, he deals a ton of damage basically on all of his skills. He's a godlike creature. This Dracomorph definitely. I want to say he was up there. Probably him and Krisk were personally my 2 most game-changing champions, like champions that I felt just tremendous progression once I unlocked these champions. Has 4 poisons on the A2 on a 3-turn cooldown and deals a ton of damage on Seeping Pain on his A1. I remember when I first pulled him, God, like a year ago now, that was what really jumped out at me, was wow, this Seeping Pain, huh? Like, it's insane. That's a really insane ability. It did get nerfed actually recently, but it's still very, very good. Next up is going to be an Orc champion. One, actually, take that back, Barbarian champion. One that I am a big fan of as well, and it's Armina. Armina on her A2, it's an AoE decreased defense. Again, 100% chance, and it also steals 7.5% of the turn meter from targets that she puts under decreased defense. Very, very handy to have that turn meter still as well. And again, that's on a 3-turn cooldown. The what is that? It's a 4.05 multiplier. 4.05 doesn't have the highest base attack at 1354, but it's also not that bad either. She is very low, very squishy on the defense though, and that is Armina. She has a really cool passive too. Fills this champion's turn meter by 10% each time an enemy receives a stun buff. So put her with your Seal of the Drakes, put her with your Archmage helmet, put her with any stunned champion that you might have, Fushan, whoever, and you know, she's gonna get that great turn meter increase. And if you have her with 2 stun champions, Created Monster, I can keep going here for a while, but, or even Bellower stun set, right? If you have her with a couple stunners or a Bellower stun set, she's going to be going so often because of the turn meter fill that she's oftentimes able to keep the entire enemy team under the decreased defense all the time with that turn meter steal as well on the A2. So very, very cool champion. She also does a decent amount of damage, as I already mentioned. We're going to cheat here on this one, guys. I did mention there's one exception to the rule, and this is it. It's Duck the Pierced. And I just love this dude so much. It's hard not to include him, but the contingency here is it's on each critical hit. So he does have to land a critical hit to land his decreased defense. But of course, as you guys know, depending on the affinity, you have a chance of landing a weak hit on any of these champions anyway. So I thought I ought to still include him. It's still a 100% chance, and it's still on a 3-turn cooldown. Exactly what we're looking for. He also has an AoE provoke that he brings to the table, and he also has a decreased accuracy on his A1. One of my favorite champions, and again, his damage is based on defense, and the multipliers there are 3.5, which is a really healthy multiplier for a defense damage based champion. He brings a lot to the table, and you can add durability on the list of all the stuff that he brings to your team. So I'm a big, big fan of this dude. I lean on him heavily on my free-to-play account. Now let's go over to Ogryn Tribe here and give a shout out to Ugo. Ugo is insane. It's hard to even pick a favorite between Ugo and Duck, but they're 2 of the better champions added to the game. Certainly this year, maybe in the last, maybe ever added to the game for epics. On Maelstrom Wrack here, her A2, it's a 3-turn cooldown, and then 100% chance of landing that decreased defense. Also has a 75% chance of placing a block bust debuff for 2 turns. The chance of placing block buffs increases by 5% for each enemy alive. So you're already getting, assuming there's 1 enemy alive, well, you're getting an 80% chance, right? So not too bad. Actually, really good. Really, really good to have the block buffs for 2 turns and decreased defense for 2 turns and attacking all enemies with a 4.8 multiplier. Granted, her base attack is very, very low. So sometimes, like I said at the beginning of the video, you hear that 4.8 in the multiplier and you're like, oh baby, she can put out some damage, but with the attack being this low, it's very difficult to scale up that attack. So removing all heal reduction, then another random debuff, then a heal as well, and then she has that cool passive where she keeps herself alive if she's the last ally alive, and then she revives all the other allies if she's the last woman standing. She also has a leech on her A1. She brings a ton to the table. I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you have her, you probably use her. She's really, really good. Great healer as well. So that is the magic affinity. Again, we have Ugo, we have Duck, we have Armina, and we have Dracomorph. Moving right along here, let's head over to Spirit Affinity, guys, and take a little look at one of my favorites, certainly the most unique debuffer in the game, in Ghostborn. On his A3, Ancestral Spirits, it's an AoE attack. Oh, crap! I was wrong. I didn't realize it's a 4-turn cooldown. Okay, we'll put him in the honorable mention category. My bad on this one. I use him in the arena, but in the arena, it doesn't even matter. Oh man, what a dummy. I could edit this out, but I'm not going to. Why? But anyway, it deserves a huge mention anyway, because the debuff cannot be resisted. That's incredible. Certainly the only champion that has a decreased defense that cannot be resisted inside the game. That allows you to build him either to be, pretty robust, pretty durable with high defense, high HP. His base stats are all on point here. Nothing that jumps out the page at you, but a lot of people just choose to build him to be kind of a quasi-nuker and load up on that attack. His multiplier on this ability is 3.8, and then he has another AoE attack on the A2, and he's only landing heal reduction. So again, do you really need to build him with a bunch of accuracy? Probably not, although he does have the strong version of decreased defense on the A1, so it depends on the user, and you can actually book that up to 100% on his A1. I didn't realize that. So either way, my bad on including him. He's officially not on the list. That brings it down to 13 champions, and that means we have 4 left for Spirit. So 4 Spirit, 4 Magic, 3 Force, and only 2 Void coming at the end of the video. So number 2 is going to be High Elf champion, and it is a guy that I have not built out yet, but I do have, and it's Royal Huntsman on Slaughter Volley. Attacks all enemies, and again, we have a 60% decreased defense. I was like, where's the chance? It's just, there's no 100% chance. Just place a decreased defense on the target for 2 turns. Again, if the attack is critical, so similar to Duck, we're gonna sneak him in there on the critical attack. And then on the dead aim is A3, deals basically a ton of damage. This is one of the heaviest hitting single target damage dealing abilities inside the game. So that is Royal Huntsman, and that is a 3.6 multiplier on Slaughter Volley, by the way, guys. Next up is going to be a new champion, a brand new champion, and that is Gensen. On his A1, it's a 3-time hitter. Really cool. We'll just kind of read his whole kit because this guy's my favorite out of all the Shadowkin champions in the game. On the A2, here it is, 3-turn cooldown, 100% chance of landing a decreased defense for 2 turns when booked. Each critical hit fills this champion's turn meter by 10%. Really cool ability. On his A3, let's read this one. It's on a 3-turn cooldown. Attacks 1 enemy, ignores unkillable, ignores shield buffs, fills the champion's turn meter by 30%. Fills the champion's turn meter by 60% instead if the target has 50% HP or less after the attack. Also, it decreases the cooldown of Steel Parting and Fated Vengeance skills by 1 turn if this attack kills an enemy. So that is, this ability gets brought to a 2-turn cooldown, and Steel Parting gets brought to a 2-turn cooldown if you kill the enemy. And if you don't kill them but they're close to dead, you get a 60% turn meter fill. And the turn meter fill on the A2, and again, the turn meter fill on the A1. Very, very cool champion. Also has this Bushido passive, increased speed and resistance by 50 if there are fewer champions on the champions team. On this champion's team, than the number of enemies on the enemy team. So cool for Spider as well. Very, very interesting champion. His multiplier there, look at that base attack, 1553, very healthy. His multiplier is actually a 3.8 on the A2, 3.8 multiplier on that AoE, so not too bad. Next up is going to be another new champion. They're really adding a lot of Spirit Affinity solid champions to the game, and that is a Sacred Order champion. And It's the dude that we really want right now. Deacon Armstrong, our boy Deke, has a sweeping retribution on his A2, a 3-turn cooldown, has a 100% chance when booked of placing a decreased defense for 2 turns. He also has time compression. What an insane ability, guys. I love this ability. Fills the turn meter by 15%, decreased turn meter of enemies by 15%, grants an extra turn. Ergo, reducing the cooldown of sweeping retribution once that extra turn procs. Very, very cool. Also have speed in all battles by 19%. This dude is insane. He's right in the conversation. I guess Ugo, Duck, and Deacon are definitely my 3 favorite epics they've added to the game. Well, I guess Archmage Helmet too? Man, 4 beast mode, like top tier epics, all added to the game in a couple months span. Very, very cool. All right, and the last but not least, you guys probably already know, Deacon Armstrong. That is a 4.0 multiplier as well, by the way. An attack with a 4.0 multiplier damage based on attack. Very nice to have that. Next up, we have Stag Knight. So Stag Knight is another just incredible champion. I'm sure a lot of you guys use Stag Knight. Really on point with that high base speed, high HP percentage as well. And then he has a 95% chance, but it's 100 if you pick up the Sniper Mastery of landing decreased defense and decreased attack. He has a 3.5 multiplier on the A2. Again, very low base attack at 859. However, if you guys play Stag Knight, you probably know he can put out a respectable amount of damage. He's not like a nuker, but you don't look at his stats at the end of any battle, whether it's arena, whether it's dungeons, and say, a Stag Knight, you did nothing. He actually brings a little punch to the table as well. So nice to have that multiplier there. So that's all I have for Spirit, guys. Again, Ghostborn didn't make the cut. Royal Huntsman, Genzin, Deacon Armstrong, and Stag Knight. I will give another shout out here. I'll cheat again and give one more to a new dwarf as well. Fodbor, always going to say Fordor. Fodbor the Bard on his A3. It's an AoE decreased defense, but it's on a 4-turn cooldown. So, you know, if we gave Ghostborn some love and everybody else, we'll give poor Fodbor the love as well. Again, he's a new champion. I actually don't have him yet. Let me know if you do have him and if you like him. He has actually, I wonder what I'm actually going to look up the multiplier on this awful crooning, and I'll let you guys know as we're talking about the next one, because I am actually curious right now. I'm curious on what the multiplier is right now. So on that, because he has a high, what was his attack? 15,360. Man, that's actually really solid. So the multiplier is 3.4. The multiplier on his A2, by the way, is 5.5. Really high multiplier on Robber's Tail. I bet this hits like a truck, this A2. Single target on a 3-turn cooldown. Very interesting champion. Let me know if you guys have him and what you think of him. But now, like I said, there's only 2 voids, surprisingly. And one of them is Lydia. So Lydia, you guys know, you get her from completing all the faction wars, and she has this insane ability, an AoE decreased defense and weaken, and puts a strengthen and increased speed buff on all allies for 2 turns. She brings so much to the table that some people often forget that she even has the strengthen and the increased speed on all a 3-turn cooldown. It's a really, really good ability in Siren's Wail. And then the last but not least, the multiplier on that is 4.0. 4.0 multiplier, but again, low base attack, high speed, and high other stats as well. Doesn't put a ton of damage out, but still serviceable. A nice like helping hand, similar to Stag Knight. So last but not least, it is Venus. So Venus is a beast. She also puts out a ton of damage. And like Dracomorph, like Lydia, she has an AoE decreased defense and a weaken on a 3-turn cooldown at 100% and an attack. The multiplier is 3.7 on this skill. So guys, that is what I have for you all. I feel like I'm forgetting somebody, but we gave so many honorable mentions. We listed all the 13 champions that have the decreased defense on 3-turn cooldowns. Who is I will leave you with this question. Who is your go-to decrease defense or weaken or debuffer on your team? Let me know in the comments below. Who's your favorite? Who's number one on your wish list out of all these champions? Let me know. Mine is Genshin by far. Definitely think he's a sick looking champion, like really good. Guys, thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. I appreciate you, and as always, take care, guys.